Americans love sandwiches. They're quick, customizable, and comforting, often linked to family memories that stay with us for life. According to a USDA-backed dietary study, more than half of U.S. adults reported eating a sandwich on any given day in the early 2000s. That's millions of people choosing a handheld meal that can be as simple as 2 slices of bread with meat and cheese or as creative as layers of sauces, spreads, and textures. Sandwiches have never been just food. They've been a symbol of resilience during hard times, a marker of culture in immigrant kitchens, and sometimes even a playful invention of pure indulgence. And while many classic sandwiches remain popular today, there are plenty of forgotten favorites that once defined childhood lunches, factory shifts, and family gatherings. Some of these sandwiches were born out of necessity when budgets were tight, while others were made for celebration, with flavors that turned ordinary bread into something unforgettable. Stay with me until the end and think about this. Which sandwich instantly takes you back to your own childhood memory? One of the most nostalgic is the fried bologna sandwich. Just the sound of bologna sizzling in a hot skillet could send kids rushing to the kitchen in the 1950s through the 1970s. For many working-class families, this wasn't just lunch. It was proof that something warm and filling could be made even when money was scarce. In 1965, a pound of bologna cost only 39 cents and a loaf of bread just 21 cents. With the minimum wage at $1.25 an hour, a single shift at work could pay for enough ingredients to feed a family for several days. Parents often cut slits around the pink slices to keep them flat in the pan while the salty aroma filled the home. Soft white bread, whether Wonder or Sunbeam, waited on the counter. A squirt of mustard or mayonnaise and maybe a slice of melting American cheese turned it into more than the sum of its parts. That first bite was unforgettable, steam hitting your tongue, tangy mustard against soft bread, and sometimes a little drip of grease onto a napkin. Though rare today, fried bologna still lingers on diner menus across the South, where every sandwich is not just a meal but a doorway back to childhood. Another sandwich that rose out of hardship is the sloppy joe. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, when unemployment hit a staggering 25%, families had to stretch every scrap of food. Out of that struggle came a messy yet beloved classic. Ground beef sautéed with onions and simmered with ketchup or tomato paste created a hearty mixture that could be piled onto soft buns. The sound of meat sizzling on the stovetop and sauce bubbling in the pan meant dinner was ready. The sloppy joe was fast, filling, and intentionally messy. Napkins piled high at the table became part of the ritual as kids laughed at sauce dripping down their hands. The original version wasn't the canned mix that became popular decades later. It was homemade, seasoned with whatever a family could afford. Beans, breadcrumbs, or oats stretched the meat during lean times, while garlic, peppers, and spices added extra flavor when money allowed. More than a sandwich, the sloppy joe was resilience made edible, a reminder that families could still share something warm and satisfying even when times were tough. Not all classic sandwiches came from scarcity. Some came from celebration and tradition. After holiday feasts, ham salad sandwiches carried the story of abundance forward. Leftover ham was chopped or ground, then mixed with mayonnaise, pickle relish, and mustard before being spread on bread. It stretched one feast into several days of lunches, proving that nothing went to waste. Each family had its own version. Some added celery for crunch, others leaned on sweet pickles for tang. The texture was creamy yet punctuated with bursts of flavor. While children sometimes groaned at eating ham salad again and again, many grew to remember it with fondness as adults. It wasn't extravagant, it was continuity. Ham salad tied Sunday suppers to Monday lunches. It symbolized resourcefulness and care, showing how families preserved abundance and made sure no food was forgotten. Even today you'll still find it in Midwestern kitchens and small-town delis, a humble reminder that thrift can taste personal. Canned meats were another staple of 20th century America, especially when refrigeration was scarce and budgets were tight. Deviled ham, spiced and ground, packed into small red-labeled tins, offered families protein that lasted for months on the shelf. Mixed with mustard, mayonnaise, and maybe a dash of paprika, it spread easily onto bread for a quick lunch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was cheap, salty, and satisfying. For workers, it was fuel. For kids, it was often met with resistance but never forgotten. The iconic Underwood Red can dates back to the 1860s, and it's still sold today, a symbol of thrift that outlived the era of scarcity that made it popular. If you open one now, the flavor takes you back instantly to simpler times, when convenience and survival shaped what ended up in a lunchbox. While some sandwiches symbolized thrift, others carried pride and tradition. In the South, pimento cheese earned the nickname, the caviar of the South. Made with sharp cheddar, mayonnaise and diced red pimentos, it spread across white bread in bright orange layers. By the 1940s, it had become a staple at lunchboxes, picnics, church gatherings and roadside diners. Creamy, tangy and slightly sweet, pimento cheese stood out from ordinary sandwich spreads. Mothers packed it for picnics, kids spread it between crackers when sandwiches weren't enough, and families passed recipes down like heirlooms. Though simple, it carried a touch of pride. Homemade, colorful, and rooted in regional tradition, pimento cheese proved that even budget-friendly food could feel indulgent. Not all sandwich memories were adored, though. By the 1950s, processed deli meats made up more than 60% of U.S. lunch meat sales. Among them was olive loaf, a pale meat speckled with green olives stuffed with red pimentos. For schoolchildren, pulling out an olive loaf sandwich from wax paper at lunch could be either a badge of pride or a moment of embarrassment. Some kids leaned in with curiosity while others wrinkled their noses. Parents chose it for its splash of color and variety at low cost. It wasn't expensive, but it looked festive, almost cheerful. Olive loaf was a small gesture of care, an attempt to make lunch feel special. Though its popularity faded by the 1980s as Americans shifted toward fresher meats, olive loaf remains a nostalgic symbol of mid-century optimism. It was proof that even processed foods could be playful. Then there were sandwiches born from pure imagination and fun like the peanut butter and bacon sandwich. By 1967, peanut butter was found in over 75% of American households, making it one of the most common pantry staples. Combine that with bacon, which Americans devoured at more than 10 pounds per person annually during the 1970s, and you had a creation that turned ordinary lunch into something indulgent. Parents often surprised kids on Saturday afternoons by stacking warm, crispy bacon strips over thick peanut butter spread on toast. The result was rebellion between bread, nutty sweetness colliding with salty crunch, grease soaking into the slice. It was bold, simple, and felt like breaking the rules of lunch. Though it never went mainstream, those who tried it never forgot. It was joy disguised as food, a memory that still makes people smile decades later. Of course, no discussion of American sandwiches would be complete without the Fluffernutter, the peanut butter and marshmallow fluff creation that captured the hearts of children. By 1968, sales of marshmallow fluff in New England peaked at over 7 million jars a year. Paired with peanut butter, it created a sticky, sweet sandwich that was adored by kids and frowned upon by nutritionists. But children didn't care. They loved pulling the bread apart just to watch marshmallow strings stretch like candy. Grandparents packed it without guilt, and school lunchrooms filled with laughter as sticky fingers reached for napkins. The Fluffernutter became more than a sandwich. It was a cultural icon, especially in Massachusetts, where it was celebrated enough to inspire fluff festivals. It was the embodiment of childhood joy, sugar highs, and the simple freedom of being a kid. Sandwiches may seem simple today, something you grab at lunch or pack for a quick snack, but once upon a time they carried the weight of memory, community, and even survival. Think back to the sandwiches you grew up with, sticky peanut butter clinging to your fingers, a packed lunch unwrapped in the school cafeteria, or that towering club sandwich that felt like luxury on a family diner outing. Each bite wasn't just food, it was a story. Across the United States, sandwiches have mirrored the rhythms of life, from the struggles of immigrant communities to the extravagance of hotel ballrooms, from working-class resilience to suburban backyard parties. Many of these sandwiches have faded from menus, but they still live on in memory, whispering about who we were and what mattered in the moment. Today, let's step back into America's kitchens and diners, where forgotten sandwiches once reigned, each one offering not only flavor but also a piece of history. The Denver sandwich, also called the Western sandwich, was more than just scrambled eggs on bread. It captured the appetite of America's rugged frontier spirit. Imagine diced ham sizzling in a pan, onions softening, bell peppers brightening the mixture, and eggs tying it all together before being pressed between two slices of toast. That hearty flavor reflected the grit of miners, railroad workers, and cowboys who needed something quick yet filling. Historians trace its roots to Chinese cooks working the railroad lines in the 19th century. They adapted egg foo young into a handheld meal, proving that food could cross borders and evolve into something distinctly American. By the 1920s, it was a diner staple from Colorado to California, and for many, biting into a Denver sandwich wasn't just breakfast. It was the West itself, tucked neatly between two slices of bread. Fast forward to 1990s New York City, where bodegas numbered over 12,000 across the 5 boroughs. On their flat-top grills, a legend was born, the chopped cheese sandwich. Ground beef hit the hot metal with a satisfying sizzle, onions mixing in before being chopped fine with a spatula, then topped with gooey cheese that melted right into the meat. Scooped onto a hero roll, it looked ordinary to outsiders, just meat and cheese. But to locals in Harlem and the Bronx, it was identity on bread. Kids bought it after school, tearing into steaming rolls on the curb. Night shift workers grabbed it under buzzing neon lights, the sandwich warming their hands as much as their stomachs. It was cheap, it was filling, and it was real. Even as upscale restaurants tried to put their spin on it, the original remained humble, wrapped in wax paper, flavored with community and pride. Italian immigrants left an indelible mark on America's sandwich history too. Between 1880 and 1920, over 4 million Italians arrived in the U.S., bringing their recipes and traditions with them. Out of those kitchens came the eggplant parmigiana sandwich. Thick slices of eggplant were breaded, fried golden, layered with marinara sauce, topped with mozzarella, and pressed inside crusty Italian bread. Garlic perfumed the air, tomato sauce simmered with sweetness, and every bite pulled long strings of cheese. For immigrant neighborhoods, it was more than a meal. It was Sunday dinners, family kitchens, and recipes passed down like heirlooms. Even now, for those who grew up with it, biting into one feels like returning to the warmth of home. Not all sandwiches were embraced by children. Take the liverwurst sandwich. For many German and Eastern European immigrants, this was comfort food, a spreadable sausage made of pork, liver, and spices smeared onto rye bread, often topped with sharp onions, tangy mustard, or pickles. The flavor was strong, earthy, and unapologetic. For parents and grandparents, it was tradition, a tie to the old country where thrift and resourcefulness meant nothing went to waste. But for kids opening their lunchboxes, the smell could be mortifying, a source of cafeteria embarrassment. Still, for those who loved it, liverwurst was more than food, it was dignity on bread, a reminder of roots too important to forget. In the South, resilience was baked right into sandwiches like the shrimp po' boy. The story goes back to 1929 in New Orleans, when the Great Depression left over a quarter of workers unemployed. Two brothers, the Martins, handed out free sandwiches to striking streetcar workers, calling them poor boys. Over time, the shrimp po' boy became the iconic version. Golden fried shrimp piled into crusty French bread, dressed with lettuce, tomato, pickles, and either mayonnaise or hot sauce. Every bite was briny, crunchy, and soulful. It wasn't just food, it was community, filling bellies after church, fueling Mardi Gras celebrations, and holding families together at gatherings. To this day, po' boys remain the Gulf Coast in sandwich form, tradition wrapped in bread. Some sandwiches, however, spoke of indulgence. In 1926, Louisville's Grand Brown Hotel hosted over 1,000 guests each night. After hours of jazz and dancing, revelers wanted something rich before heading home. The chef responded with the hot brown, a slice of toast layered with roasted turkey, smothered in creamy Mornay sauce, sprinkled with Parmesan and broiled until bubbling and golden, with 2 crisp strips of bacon on top. This was no grab-and-go meal, it was theater on a plate, meant to be savored with knife and fork. For Kentuckians, it became a symbol of Southern hospitality, rich and unforgettable. The 1950s brought another chicken-inspired dish to American tables, chicken a la king. Originally an elegant, creamy stew of diced chicken, mushrooms, and peppers in a velvety sauce, it was often served over toast or rice. Leftovers, however, transformed into decadent sandwiches. Messy and satisfying, they became weekend luxuries for families, a way to enjoy fine dining flavors at home without breaking the budget. Though it eventually faded from everyday kitchens, many still recall it as abundance in sandwich form, proof that aspiration and comfort could coexist between 2 slices of bread. As beef became more central to American diets in the 1970s, the open-faced roast beef sandwich with gravy earned its place as the ultimate comfort food. Thick slices of beef draped over bread, drowned in rich brown gravy until nearly unrecognizable as a sandwich, with mashed potatoes soaking up what the bread could not. It wasn't glamorous, but on cold nights and long days, it warmed both body and spirit. Diners across the Midwest served it steaming, and for families, it was a way to stretch leftovers into another meal that felt just as abundant. For a taste of elegance, the club sandwich towered above the rest. Triple-decked, neatly quartered, and pinned with toothpicks, it stacked turkey, bacon, lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise into neat layers that looked almost too perfect to eat. By the mid-1970s, it had even become an airline staple, part of the 120 million meals served on U.S. flights. In diners, hotels, and lounges, it was a showpiece. For kids, sharing its triangles felt special, like getting a little piece of glamour on a plate. But not all sandwiches were big or rich. Some were quiet comforts like the cucumber tea sandwich. With suburban tea parties booming in the 1950s and 1960s, delicate cucumber slices layered over buttered bread, or sometimes with dill or cream cheese, offered crisp freshness at bridal showers, garden parties, and afternoon teas. Light and refined, they gave gatherings a touch of grace. Even in simple backyards, nibbling one felt like proper etiquette. Then there was the peanut butter and honey sandwich, a true childhood classic. By the 1970s, Americans were consuming hundreds of millions of pounds of honey, and when paired with peanut butter, the result was magic. Honey seeped into soft bread, golden and fragrant, mingling with the nutty richness of peanut butter. Sticky fingers and sweet smiles made it a parent's go-to, both wholesome and easy. For kids, it felt like dessert disguised as lunch, a small moment of happiness in the middle of the day. Few sandwiches, though, connected generations quite like the meatloaf sandwich. Whether cold straight from the fridge or warmed with a layer of ketchup or gravy, it turned leftovers into lunches packed with love. For adults, it was practical, a thrifty way to stretch a family meal. For kids, it was the taste of school cafeterias and homemade dinners. Honest and unpretentious, the meatloaf sandwich symbolized rhythm, thrift, and continuity. Looking back, each of these sandwiches tells us something about who we were. They weren't just meals, they were chapters in the American story. The Denver spoke of frontier grit. The chopped cheese shouted urban pride. The eggplant parmigiano whispered immigrant heritage. The liverwurst carried old-world dignity. The po' boy embodied resilience. The hot brown captured indulgence. Each one in its own way reflected survival, celebration, or belonging. Even when they disappeared from menus, they lingered in memory, reminding us that food is never just food, it is culture, family, and identity, wrapped up in something as simple as bread. So which of these forgotten sandwiches would you bring back today? Would you go for the hearty roast beef, the humble chopped cheese, or the refined cucumber tea? Maybe it's the peanut butter and honey, still clinging to childhood afternoons. One thing is certain, sandwiches are more than just food. They are memory made edible, carrying with them the pride and joy of generations. And if you enjoyed this journey through America's lost flavors, make sure to subscribe, because there are countless hidden histories of everyday foods waiting to be told, and you won't want to miss them.